The Biden inflation, we were told and lied to about, we were told it was first caused by supply chain issues, coupled with a shortage of employees who don't want to work because of government handouts. It was a lie when they said it, and now the information is coming in, and inflation, the Biden inflation that we're dealing with, it's what I said it was. It's caused by greed. I said this last year. Check the company earnings. If people knew how to read a spreadsheet and look at company earnings, they could tell that inflation is caused by greed. And now the New York Times, this is from today's New York Times, headline, companies push prices higher, protecting profits, but adding to inflation. Corporate profits have been bolstered by higher prices, even as some of the costs of doing business have fallen in recent months. So pay attention to this. Send it to your idiot Republican friends, because this is the truth about inflation. The prices of oil, transportation, food ingredients, and other raw materials have fallen in recent months as the shocks stemming from the pandemic and the war in Ukraine have faded. Yet many big businesses have continued raising prices at a rapid clip. Get it? Okay. The story goes on. For much of the past 2 years, most companies, quote, had a perfectly good excuse to go ahead and raise prices, said Samuel Rhines, an economist and the managing director of Corbu, a research firm that serves hedge funds and other investors. Samuel Rhines goes on to say, quote, everybody knew that the war in Ukraine was inflationary, that grain prices were going up, blah, blah, blah. That's what he said, blah, blah, blah. And they just took advantage of that. We're now learning what I told you a year ago, that inflation is caused by greed. Reporting in the New York Times shows that corporations are no longer dealing with supply chain issues. They never really were, but they kept raising prices. Why? Because they can, because we were all told there's supply chain issues and that there's a war in Ukraine. And as that economist said, blah, 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 blah. If people believe inflation is real, raise prices. And they increased prices. It's not due to corporations passing their increased costs on to customers. That's what they want you to believe. Check the profit margins every quarter. These companies report their earnings. There are no new increased costs, just increased profits. Inflation that we're going through right now is because corporations are raising prices. They are charging more, not because their labor costs have gone up or the costs of materials have gone up. They are raising prices because raising prices increase profits. And they can get away with it because most Americans are economic illiterates who believe what the loudest voices say about inflation. Now, there are several ways to solve the inflation problem. One is to do what we're doing right now, and that's to have the Fed just keep raising interest rates, make the cost of borrowing so prohibitively expensive, economic growth sputters, and we go into a recession, if not a depression, and the demand for goods, well, that goes down, so corporations are forced to lower their prices. That's the Fed's plan, to destroy the economy, to bring inflation down. Seems awfully cruel to create a recession, to throw all those people out of work just to bring down prices. And by the way, corporations, yes, they have begun to lay people off, but they're just replacing them with cheaper workers. If you look at what's going on in big tech, yeah, they're big layoffs. They're just bringing in men and women from India who work cheaper. Another way to whip inflation now, as former President Gerald Ford used to say, is to institute a series of price freezes That would be where the President of the United States declares an emergency. He has the power to say it's against the law to increase prices. Now, if that seems like communism or, fascism, it's what Richard Nixon did. I believe it was in 71. I'm not sure. Nixon just said you can't raise prices for anything. But that's the type of government intervention most Americans these days would find overly intrusive. Here's the best way to whip inflation. The best way to whip inflation is to use the antitrust laws already on the books and create the kind of competition that lowers prices. When only one company provides internet or cable service, they pretty much get away with charging whatever they want. Likewise, when a handful of companies manufacture all the wood, then coffins become more expensive. Did you know there's such a thing as big coffin? It's a monopoly that nobody likes to think about. Oil, they can charge whatever they want because there are only a handful of oil companies. They should all be put out of business, but there's no competition. When there are more companies fighting for the same dollar, they lower their prices. You want to bring down inflation? Bust the monopolies wide open the way they used to. You break up big tech, big ag, the costs for everything will come down, even while wages go up. Wages will go up because these new companies, you bust up a company, then new companies spring up. They're going to scramble to hire fresh talent. They're going to have to lure fresh talent with higher wages. It's a win-win for everybody but the 5 wealthiest families in this country who own Washington and every single business school and university that teaches economics. They keep Americans dumb when it comes to economics. So we keep electing stupid politicians like Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump. As long as we keep electing stupid politicians who make us dumber, we will never understand basic economics, and we will fall prey to the liars who continue to say lowering taxes for the wealthy pays for itself. It doesn't. We will continue to believe that lowering taxes for the wealthy increases jobs. It doesn't. It doesn't matter how many times we've proven that supply-side economics doesn't work. The rich want us to believe that. You know why? Because they don't want to pay taxes. So they will lie and cheat and pay economists and politicians to say anything, convince you and me of anything, just so they don't have to pay taxes. And in order to pull this off, you and I have to be economically illiterate. We have to be stupid. We can't understand basic economics 101. We have to believe the lie that lowering taxes for the wealthy pays for itself. Well, look at the budget deficit, right? $7 trillion, it's $32 trillion. $7 trillion of that belongs to Donald Trump because of the Trump tax cuts. The rest comes from George W. Bush because of his tax cuts and Ronald Reagan because of his tax cuts. If the American people continue to be this dumb, every lie can be repeated over and over until we believe it. It's how we got into Iraq, and it's how we're getting into an economic downturn of income inequality that is going to be insurmountable until the American people wake up and understand that whatever comes out of the mouths of rich people is a lie. Think of your boss when you ask for a raise. He or she will say anything, do anything, except give you the raise that you deserve. He will claim poverty. He will say next year, people who have money are liars. Everything taught at Harvard when it comes to economics is a lie because they have an endowment of $100 billion. They're controlled by rich people, and rich people are effing liars. Don't trust them with your job, your life, or your family.